Gemma Doyle is the manager of the Sherlock Holmes Bookshop and Emporium, specializing in Sherlock Holmes on more of the retail side. So, the carefully hidden, potentially rare, potentially valuable magazine on her bookshelf was quite a shock to her. Gemma and her friend slash business partner, Jane, go out of their way to try and find the owner of the magazine and return it to her, only to find her dead. The spotlight only brightens on Gemma as a suspect when a second body is found. Welcome to Fictional Narrative. I'm Neri, and it is Cozy Saturday. Cozy Saturday is a series where I review the latest cozy mystery that I've delved into. I give a non-spoiler review followed by the rating, tell you whether or not I would continue the series, and then we go into the spoilery review. Today I'm reviewing Elementary She Read by Vicki Delany. It is the first in the Sherlock Holmes Bookshop mysteries. First of all, before I get into this, I do want to kind of talk a little bit about how we have the main character, Gemma, who is a very, very strong character. She has these amazing traits that kind of run parallel to what you think of when you think of a Holmes. But when I talk about her, I don't want to think of her just like, oh, a female Sherlock in a cozy. I think that the character can stand out for herself and come into her own, and that's my take on it coming into reading this story. And there are even points, like, for example, and this isn't really a spoiler, but someone comes into her shop and picks up a book about how to think like Sherlock Holmes, and Gemma remarks, well, he's a fictional character. Putting aside the irony that she is also a fictional character, I do want to give her the benefit of being her own character. And so, as much as someone who has read the Sherlock Holmes series and has seen different interpretations of his character over the years, BBC Sherlock being terrible, that is my opinion. If you don't like it, that's okay. I'm not going to say I saw everything, but if I were to pick one interpretation of Sherlock that I think is probably closer to the book, I'd probably go with Basil the Mouse. Again, that is just my opinion. So, coming from that as well, I can kind of see where the author tried to incorporate it into creating this amateur sleuth. And I'm absolutely going to talk about whether or not that actually worked out. But one of the biggest takeaways that I think is important is that Gemma is an incredibly strong character. I like her voice. I like her observations. I like how quick she is to pick certain things up. But of course, she is a flawed character. She's not perfect or anything. I don't expect her to be. But one thing I found about this character is that she's very introverted. She's very matter of fact. She gets to the point in a way that is very practical, but not as if she's too brutal or too harsh in any way. She is an insanely privileged character. She is originally from England, but now she's living in Massachusetts. The town in which the store is also a very quaint, kind of touristy little town, and the shop is adjoined with Miss Hudson's tea room, which is operated by her friend Jane as a part owner with Gemma herself and I believe her great uncle, who is a very eccentric character. The bookshop has a cat named Moriarty who does not like Gemma, like at all. He'll be friendly with anybody else except her, and I thought that was a cute thing to add in. At home, Gemma has a dog, a tiny little dog, and I thought that was cute as well. It's unfortunate that they don't really get too much of a part in either solving the mystery or interacting with more important people. They mainly just interact with Gemma and then some characters that come in and out of the shop. After finding this magazine and then finding the owner of the magazine is deceased, obviously that's a crime scene. But of course, Gemma being so observational as she is, she's just curious. Honestly, at this point, there's no real case that she's involved in. She's just curious. Who is this person? Why did they hide something in my shop? I understand I have a lot. She has a lot of Sherlock stuff, but she knows her inventory. So obviously that magazine was going to stick out to her. And it's very important to know that she really doesn't deal too much in collectibles, if at all. So a lot of her stuff is on the retail side, the popular side, things that you can commonly buy. Although she does get phone calls and visits from collectors, she doesn't necessarily go out of her way to procure those items herself. And the collector's angle, I think, is a nice touch because we do have a reoccurring character that is the collector that kind of comes to her, almost as if he doesn't get the hint that she doesn't really deal in too many of these collectible items, but he has someone he can talk to about this thing that he obviously has such a huge interest in. He wants to take his time and spend his money to collect. Gemma is a bit frosty, but it's not something that I mind at all. I do think it's possible that someone should gift her a gratitude journal, but that's neither here nor there. It's everywhere. It's throughout the entire book, but I think I'm going to talk more about that in the spoilery section. In terms of Gemma being a little frosty, though, it does kind of cast a feeling of discomfort throughout the entire book as the mystery unfolds. For example, one of the detectives that is on the case originally turns out to be her ex-boyfriend. Awkward. And he wants her to stay out of it, which is fair point because going back to the mystery at this point, with just the owner of the magazine being deceased, she is curious, looks through a few items, looks at the body, but other than curiosity, we don't have any reason to believe that Gemma should continue to investigate. Even when the second detective kind of turns on the heat on Gemma because this is a weird scenario. You have what is possibly a rare magazine, and you came to find its owner, found exactly the owner's room, and also her dead body. And because of how observant she is, Gemma seems to know more than she's letting on, which technically isn't really the case. There's nothing that she knows that the cops can't find out. They're basically on like the same step, and one of the detectives thinks she's more suspicious than she needs to be. Of course, her ex is on her side, like, no, it's really not like that. You don't know her, trust me, I know her. It's really not like that. And the second detective is like, well, if you know her, and if she's a person of interest at all, you probably shouldn't be on the case, which we do get into a little bit of those politics as the story continues. Just like I mentioned in the introduction to this video, this is not the only body. And so Gemma finds herself in a place that she is even more of a suspect. The way that I read this book, I did not get the feeling that her wanting to meddle in this case or wanting to tap into those amateur sleuth instincts is because she wants to clear her name. I think she's bothered by the fact that she's a suspect, but I think she's doing it on some level for her own ego and definitely 100% out of spite. And if you love characters doing things out of spite, I think this is a book that may be worth reading. I rated this book a 2 out of 5 because I found that the mystery itself, as it unfolded, I didn't enjoy it. Okay, by the second body, we're in like the middle of the book. The intrigue is still there. Then we get our killer reveal and the resolution, and I'm lost. I'm completely lost. I'm kind of on the fence about whether or not I would continue it. I like Gemma enough. I like Jane. I like the great uncle. I like the little town. I don't really care about the once was, maybe it might still be romance. And I think it's just with these books, I do need kind of a good combination and balance between character and it being character driven, and then the actual mystery has to be good. And it just wasn't for me. So much so that I think I was actually very irritated with everybody except Jane and the great uncle by the end. The great uncle, because basically most of the book he's traveling, because most of what he does is travel. And Jane, because literally I feel like she's the only person speaking with common sense at certain points. I might start the second book, but if I don't like it, then I'll probably just DNF it real quick. I might try one more and see how I feel, but again, I am rating this a 2 out of 5. That being said, let's go ahead and move into the spoilery section of this video. And let's start right back with Miss Gemma Doyle. Okay, first of all, her ex broke up with her in such a weird way that I think it would make sense for her to still be upset at him, right? It would also make sense for them to kind of still have feelings for each other. Kind of hard though for me to see them ending up with each other. I think if someone had broken up with me in the way that he broke up with her, I would just feel unwanted and therefore would not pursue that again. Second, the thing with Gemma is she's so observant that yes, she can predict certain things that people are going to do, which is honestly okay. I don't mind that. I've been reading some amateur sleuths that do not have the instinct to be an amateur sleuth. I think she has the great instinct to be an amateur sleuth. I don't think that she has the right motivations. For example, in this book, like I said earlier, I think that she really, it just gave me the vibe of she's investigating this out of spite. Because had she stuck out of it, they would not have much on her. Yeah, she might be a person of interest, but there's nothing tying her to being the killer. He makes kind of an antagonist out of the essentially the lead detective who is not her ex-boyfriend. When the second body is found, Gemma finds it, Jane's there, then they have to make it look like they weren't there, but the same detectives were in that same city and they had already confronted her, so it wasn't like she needed an alibi. They knew she was there. And then she just continues. Like, the more that she's angry at the detective, the more that she acts out. It's like when two children are just angry with each other is the vibe. The combination is just a little bit jarring. She's judgmental and arrogant and really selfish, quite actually. I wouldn't say it's to the point that she isn't aware of them, but she can justify them, so it almost does not matter to her. And one of my favorite things about her relationship with Jane is that Jane is able to confront Gemma and do it in a very professional way in terms of what she needs as a business partner, and she sees the privilege that Gemma has and isn't afraid to point it out. There's also a weird point in the book where she still kind of assumes that her ex has feelings for her, and she says, he still loves me, doesn't he? Not does he still love me? I think usually you would expect that, okay, you broke up with someone for a while and you see them again. The question you'd be asking is he still in love with me? And while I am complaining a little bit about Gemma, part of me not really finding this character too exciting is because I relate to her on an introvert to introvert level. Also, what I found, a lot of the way that Gemma chooses to investigate is based on the fact that she doesn't have control over the issues that are happening around her. Now, the end of the mystery, on the other hand, that was like really heavy handed in terms of, oh, we really need to figure out an ending here. So, what is like the tiniest little detail that can be mentioned that adds everything up? But the thing is, if you were to, let's say, tailor this to an interpretation of a Sherlock Holmes mystery where the tiniest detail that the very observant amateur sleuth is looking at is what tips her off, it wasn't executed that way here. It was done very sloppily. The execution was wrong. But also, the villain monologue made no sense. And by the time that we as a reader are sitting there listening to and or reading, because I listened to the audiobook, seeing how the plan actually came into fruition doesn't make sense. It's like you jumped through 500 hoops, and for what? And a thing that I really cannot stand, and this was at the end, right? There's jewelry that was discovered with the first body or the second body, one of them. There was jewelry that was discovered that was thought to have been valuable. Turns out wasn't. The magazine that was potentially valuable, turns out it wasn't. Well, then someone remarks, all these deaths are for nothing. Can't put my finger on how to articulate how I feel about that sentiment, but it just seems nonsensical to me. Because even if the jewels were valuable or that magazine was valuable, I don't think it's really worth taking a human life. Surely there could have been something a little bit more creative for that particular character to say. So anyway, that does conclude my review of Elementary She Reads. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye!